Imagine standing near one of the most powerful waterfalls on Earth, feeling the ground vibrate beneath your feet as millions of gallons of water crash down every second. Now imagine someone telling you that hidden somewhere beneath that roaring water, there were chambers. Massive chambers, built in stone, connected to tunnels and strange structures that looked less like ordinary industrial equipment and more like something designed for a much bigger purpose. And according to some accounts from the late 1800s, these chambers weren't supposed to be there. Because when workers and engineers began expanding infrastructure around Niagara Falls in the 1890s, they reportedly encountered underground spaces that didn't match the official construction plans. Structures that seemed older, more complex, and strangely positioned in a way that some believe could harness the immense force of the falling water itself. Not just for mills, not just for turbines, but possibly for something far more advanced. And the strangest part? Many of those discoveries were barely documented, sealed, or quietly removed from later discussions about the history of the falls. So tonight we're exploring a strange historical mystery, the 1896 Niagara Falls energy chambers they tried to erase from history. To understand why this story fascinates so many people today, we first need to look at what was happening at Niagara Falls in the late 19th century. By the 1890s, Niagara Falls had already become one of the most important energy experiments in the world. Engineers were racing to figure out how to turn the immense power of the waterfall into usable electricity. Factories needed power, cities were growing rapidly, and the industrial world was hungry for new energy sources. This was the era when some of the most famous electrical pioneers were working on revolutionary systems. Massive tunnels were carved into the rock beneath the falls. Water was redirected through huge channels, and giant turbines were installed to convert the falling water into electricity. For the first time in history, power generated at Niagara Falls could be transmitted miles away to nearby cities. To people living in the late 1800s, it must have felt like witnessing the birth of the modern electrical world. But during this intense period of excavation and construction, something interesting reportedly happened. Workers digging beneath the surface occasionally encountered underground chambers and structures that didn't seem to match the new infrastructure being built. Some accounts describe large vaulted spaces carved deep into the rock. Others mention tunnels or cavities that appeared to predate the modern power stations. Now, to be clear, historians generally attribute most of the underground structures around Niagara Falls to early hydroelectric development. But some alternative researchers believe a few of these spaces may have existed long before the official power plants were constructed. And that idea leads directly into one of the most controversial historical theories connected to the site. The idea that Niagara Falls may once have been part of a much older energy system, a system sometimes associated with the mysterious civilization often referred to online as Tartaria. Now, if you've spent any time exploring historical mysteries on the internet, you've probably heard the name Tartaria before. It's a term that appears on old maps from the 17th and 18th centuries, describing a vast region across parts of Asia and Eurasia. But in modern alternative history discussions, however, the word has taken on a very different meaning. Some researchers believe it refers to a forgotten advanced civilization, one that supposedly possessed sophisticated technology long before the Industrial Revolution. According to this theory, certain massive architectural structures found around the world, large stone buildings, underground vaults, and unusual engineering projects might actually be remnants of that lost system. And in this interpretation, Niagara Falls becomes especially interesting because very few places on Earth offer such a concentrated natural energy source. Every second, roughly hundreds of thousands of gallons of water plunge over the edge of the falls. That constant movement represents an enormous amount of mechanical force. Modern hydroelectric plants capture only a portion of that power. But if an earlier civilization had understood how to harness it, the possibilities would have been enormous. Supporters of the theory suggest that underground chambers beneath the falls may have been positioned in ways that allowed water pressure, vibration, or resonance to generate energy, almost like a giant natural power station built directly into the rock. In their view, the hydroelectric facilities constructed in the late 1800s may not have been the first attempt to use Niagara's energy, but rather a rediscovery of something much older. Of course, mainstream historians strongly dispute this idea. There's no widely accepted archaeological evidence proving the existence of an advanced global civilization connected to Tartaria. Most experts say the underground structures near Niagara Falls were simply part of the massive engineering projects required to build the first hydroelectric power plants. And to be fair, those projects were incredibly ambitious. In fact, one of the most impressive achievements at Niagara Falls was the construction of a huge underground tunnel designed to carry water away from the turbines. This tunnel stretched thousands of feet beneath the surface and was carved directly through solid rock. Workers labored for years to complete it. When it finally opened, it allowed water used in the turbines to flow back into the Niagara River downstream. Without that tunnel, large-scale hydroelectric generation at the falls wouldn't have been possible. So many of the underground spaces reported during construction were likely connected to this enormous infrastructure. But here's where the mystery continues to capture people's imagination. Even though the official history of Niagara Falls' power stations is well documented, the site itself has undergone constant modification for more than a century. Tunnels have been sealed, old structures have been demolished, new systems have replaced older ones, and large portions of the underground network remain inaccessible to the public. Which means many of the spaces beneath the falls are rarely seen and rarely discussed, which leaves plenty of room for speculation. And speculation tends to grow in places where powerful natural forces and massive engineering projects intersect. After all, Niagara Falls has always attracted bold ideas. In the early 2000s, inventors imagined transmitting electricity wirelessly from the falls across vast distances. Some believed the location could become the center of a global energy grid. Others proposed massive expansions that would divert even more water to produce power for entire regions. So the idea that someone might have attempted something unusual there in the distant past doesn't feel entirely impossible to people who love exploring historical mysteries. Still, separating speculation from documented history is important. What we know for certain is that Niagara Falls played a critical role in the birth of modern hydroelectric power. The systems built there proved that large-scale renewable energy could supply electricity to cities, and that breakthrough helped shape the energy infrastructure we rely on today. But mysteries tend to linger around places where so much construction and excavation have taken place, especially when much of that work happened more than a century ago. Old blueprints disappear, reports are incomplete, stories from workers get passed down and slowly evolve over time, and eventually, small unanswered questions can grow into large alternative theories. Which brings us back to the story of the so-called energy chambers. Were they simply part of the vast hydroelectric engineering beneath the falls, or were some of them older structures that inspired later development? Right now, there's no clear historical evidence proving the existence of an advanced ancient power system beneath the falls, but the combination of immense natural energy, deep underground tunnels, and more than a century of construction ensures that Niagara will probably always remain a place where mystery thrives. Because when you're dealing with one of the most powerful natural forces on Earth and miles of hidden structures beneath it, there will always be parts of the story we can't fully see. And maybe that's why the legend continues to grow, because somewhere beneath the roar of Niagara Falls, behind sealed tunnels and forgotten excavation sites, there may still be spaces that few people have ever explored, spaces that once made workers stop and wonder what they had just uncovered. So the next time you see images of Niagara Falls or watch the endless wall of water crashing into the river below, remember that what we see above the surface is only part of the story. Beneath the rock, beneath the tunnels, beneath more than a century of engineering, there may still be unanswered questions about what was discovered there in the 1890s, and whether those mysterious chambers were simply part of an ambitious hydroelectric project or something much older that history never fully explained. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe and stick around, because history is full of forgotten discoveries, unexplained structures, and mysteries hiding in places we think we already understand. And sometimes, the most intriguing secrets are the ones buried just beneath the surface.